Have you ever found yourself standing right outside a church or a funeral home?
Oh, absolutely.
Right, and your hand is just like hovering right over the heavy brass handle of the door, and suddenly you're just completely paralyzed.
Yes, paralysis by fear of doing the wrong thing.
Exactly. You can hear that low rhythmic murmur of voices inside, and you know you need to walk in there. You have to cross that threshold, but your mind is just racing.
You're second-guessing everything.
Everything. You're asking yourself, wait, is my suit too light? Am I supposed to immediately walk up to the family? Or, what could I possibly say to someone whose entire world has just completely collapsed?
It's an incredibly heavy moment.
It is. It's this incredibly human, completely universal moment of just pure uncertainty in the face of someone else's profound grief.
Yeah, and that hesitation at the door, it's something almost everyone experiences. And if we look closely at it, that paralysis actually stems from a place of deep inherent respect.
Oh, how so?
Well, we pause instinctively because we know the space we're about to enter is exceptionally delicate. We recognize that the people inside are existing in a state of profound vulnerability.
Right. They're barely holding it together.
Exactly. So our highest priority in that split second is to avoid adding even like a single ounce of friction or stress to their shoulders.
We just want to do no harm.
Right. But that intense desire to do no harm can very easily spiral into a paralyzing fear of the unknown, especially if the cultural or religious or social setting of the mourning period is entirely new to us.
Which is exactly why we are dedicating today's deep dive to mapping out this exact terrain.
I'm really looking forward to this one.
Me too.
Yeah.
We are decoding a comprehensive guide on Catholic visitation etiquette, which was provided by the funeral program site. We want to look past the surface of these, well, often unfamiliar traditions and expectations.
Because it's not just about rules.
Exactly. The goal here is to help you walk through those heavy doors with absolute confidence so that you can actually offer true comfort to the people who need it rather than, standing in the corner quietly wrestling with your own anxiety.
Which helps no one.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this. Because what we are really talking about here isn't just a rigid list of rules to memorize. We are talking about the architecture of human empathy.
The architecture.
Yeah.
I like that. It really is entirely about architecture. When we examine this guide from the funeral program site, we aren't just looking at a behavioral checklist. We are looking at a highly evolved container for grief.
A container for grief.
Yes. Every single rule, every suggestion about what to wear or where to stand or how long to stay, it exists for a deeply psychological reason. These traditions have evolved over centuries to create a structured, supportive environment that gently holds both the mourning family and the wider community attempting to support them.
So, whether you are listening because you are actively prepping for an upcoming service, or you're just fascinated by how different cultures build frameworks to handle the biggest transitions in life, we are going to explore the underlying logic of these spaces.
The why behind the what's.
Exactly. By understanding the why and the how behind the what, the anxiety of the unknown dissipates. You transform from an anxious bystander into a genuinely supportive presence.
And that transformation, it requires us to first understand the literal and emotional geography of the space. Before we can navigate the interactions, we have to understand where the visitation actually sits in the broader sequence of mourning.
Right, context is everything.
The guide is very specific about this chronology. A Catholic visitation almost always happens before the formal funeral mass.
It is the preamble to the main event.
Right.
And the text notes that these visitations are typically held at a funeral home, sometimes inside the vestibule or a side chapel of a church, or occasionally even at a family residence.
Location can vary, yeah.
But regardless of the physical building you're walking into, the atmospheric guidelines remain identical. The text defines this space explicitly as quiet, reflective, and respectful.
Which makes sense.
It does, but simultaneously it acts as a space for genuine human connection. The guide notes that small gestures and kind words can mean a great deal. I want to pause on that phrase.
It's a really important phrase.
Because in our normal, everyday lives, a small gesture like a nod or a brief handshake, it doesn't usually carry a massive amount of weight. We usually require grand gestures to feel deeply connected.
They do.
So why is the threshold for meaning so drastically lowered in this specific space?
Well, to understand that shift, we have to look at the cognitive and emotional state of the grieving family. When a family is in the acute early stages of grief, their emotional bandwidth is stretched to its absolute physiological limit.
They are just exhausted.
Completely. The brain, under extreme stress or trauma, is essentially operating in survival mode. They're processing a massive, life-altering reality. So, in that state of cognitive overload, they simply do not have the capacity to process grand, complex gestures.
They can't handle a grand gesture even if you offered one.
Exactly. The threshold for meaning is lowered because their sensitivity is intensely heightened. In that quiet, reflective environment, a simple, warm handshake, or a hand placed gently on a shoulder, or even just a prolonged moment of eye contact registers with incredible magnitude.
Wow.
Yeah, the formality and the quietness of the room essentially strip away all the normal background noise of life, which isolates those small gestures and magnifies their emotional impact.
The quiet room isolates the small gestures. I love that. It kind of changes the acoustics of our interactions.
What do you mean?
Like, in a loud, busy restaurant, you have to shout to get someone's attention. But in a perfectly silent room, a whisper carries all the way to the back wall. The visitation creates that silent room for the family.
It does. It really does. And the source refers to this gathering as the first step in the farewell process. It sets the emotional and logistical tone for the heavier, highly structured funeral mass that usually follows the next day.
Right. The Mass is a whole different environment.
Very different. The Mass itself is liturgical. It has a strict, ancient order, and there is very little room for personalized, spontaneous interaction with the grieving family. The visitation, therefore, is the designated, engineered space for that community interaction.
Think of the visitation as an emotional foyer.
Emotional foyer.
Yeah. When you enter a massive formal building, like a cathedral or a grand theater, you don't walk straight from the chaotic, noisy street directly into the inner sanctuary. You step into a foyer first.
Right, to adjust.
Exactly. It is a transitional space. It's where you take off your heavy coat, you instinctively lower your voice, you let your eyes adjust to the light, and you prepare yourself for the gravity of the main room. The visitation is the emotional foyer for the funeral mass.
That's a perfect analogy.
It is the space where the community collectively transitions from the busy, loud outside world into the sacred, heavy space of loss.
That transitional function is crucial. And the funeral program site explicitly emphasizes that this gathering serves a dual purpose within that foyer.
What's the dual purpose?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it is as much for the community to show support as it is to honor the deceased. It acknowledges a fundamental sociological truth, which is that grief cannot be sustainably handled in isolation.
We aren't built for it.
No, we aren't. The visitation provides a structured mechanism for the community to rally around the surviving members, to physically encircle the family before they have to face the daunting reality of the final formal funeral service.
It completely reframes the entire purpose of your attendance.
It really does.
You aren't just going to look at floral arrangements and sign your name in a book. You are functioning as a structural load-bearing pillar for the family.
A load-bearing pillar, yes.
So, knowing the gravity of that emotional foyer, the next question is how we physically prepare ourselves to cross that threshold. The guide moves immediately into physical presentation, detailing dress codes and digital boundaries.
And the way we present ourselves physically is our first tangible act of respect. It's communicated before we even speak a word.
What does the guide say about clothes?
The text is unambiguous regarding attire. It calls for modest and conservative clothing. It specifically highlights dark or neutral tones, so black, navy, gray, or muted colors.
Standard funeral wear.
Right. It explicitly states that this is not the environment for bright, flashy, or overly casual clothing. For men, the suggestion is dress slacks and a collared shirt or a full suit. For women, a dress, a blouse with a skirt, or dress pants. The overarching directive is to present yourself in a way that demonstrates respect for the occasion and the family.
Okay, I have to push back a little here, though, or at least ask the question.
Sure, go ahead.
Look at the modern world. We live in an era of extreme personal expression, where casual wear is everywhere. People wear jeans to the symphony, they wear sneakers to five-star restaurants.
They do. The culture has shifted.
Fashion today is all about standing out and communicating your unique identity. So what does this all mean for us today? Why does it actually matter to the family if I show up in a bright yellow sweater or a graphic tee, as long as my heart is in the right place and I showed up to support them? Isn't this strictness a bit outdated?
It's a fair question, but it matters deeply. And it actually has nothing to do with judging your fashion sense or enforcing outdated sartorial rules.
Okay. What is it about them?
It is entirely about the mechanics of visual focus. Consider how the human eye works in a physical environment. If you walk into a room where the visual palette is composed of muted colors, shadows, dark suits, and soft lighting, the environment feels cohesive and settled.
Right.
But if someone walks into that room wearing a bright yellow sweater, every eye in the room will naturally, involuntarily dart toward that high contrast color.
Your optic nerve just pulls your attention there, whether you want it to or not.
Precisely. Bright, flashy, or highly expressive clothing pulls visual and psychological focus to the individual wearing it. But a visitation is one of the rare moments in human existence where the focus must categorically not be on you as an individual attendee.
You are not the main character today.
Exactly. Dark colors, uniform styles, and muted tones, they strip away visual distractions. By collectively dressing down our individuality, the community creates a visual quietness that mirrors the auditory quietness of the room. We've forced the focus away from ourselves and onto the family and the memory of the deceased. It is a deliberate act of visual humility.
Visual humility, I love that term. You are actively choosing to blend into the background so the family can safely occupy the center.
Yes, you're making space for them.
That completely shifts the paradigm. It goes from, I have to follow this annoying rule, to, I am giving the family the gift of an undistracted environment.
It's you have to focus.
And that concept of stripping away distractions brings us directly to the other major boundary established in this section, technology.
Yes. The guide is uncompromising on this front. Phones must be silenced before you enter.
Not just on vibrate, silenced.
Silenced. There is absolutely no texting or taking calls in the main viewing area. Furthermore, it notes that photography is heavily discouraged unless explicitly permitted by the family.
Which feels almost jarring in today's culture. We document everything.
Everything.
We live through our lenses. We take pictures of our meals, our commutes, our pets. If we go to a wedding or a birthday party, there is a total expectation that we will capture the moment. But here, the guide demands that we sever that digital tether entirely.
It is a radical demand in the modern context, and it forces us into complete undocumented presence. The ban on texting and taking calls is, on a surface level, about maintaining the auditory piece of the environment.
Right, a ringing phone ruins the mood.
A ringing phone or a loud notification chime instantly shatters the reflective atmosphere. But the discouragement of photography touches on something much deeper regarding human behavior and the dignity of the grieving process.
Let's explore that dignity aspect. How does the presence of a camera violate the dignity of the space?
Well, grief is fundamentally not a performance. The tears, the physical exhaustion, the raw, unfiltered emotion on the faces of the family members, these are deeply intimate states of being.
They're completely raw.
They are not moments intended for public consumption or digital permanence. When you remove the camera from the equation, you remove the performative anxiety that plagues modern life.
You don't have to worry about how you look while you cry.
Exactly. You allow the family to experience their pain openly without the subconscious fear of being observed through a lens or immortalized in a moment of absolute despair. The text insists that the focus must remain on the moment and the people present.
And a smartphone inherently fractures that focus. Even if you aren't taking a picture, just looking down at a text message pulls you out of the room.
It induces a state of continuous partial attention. Your body is in the room, but your mind is elsewhere. The camera pulls you out of the present moment and into the future as you evaluate how the photo will look when posted later.
Or a screen pulls you into a completely different physical location.
Exactly. By enforcing these strict digital boundaries, the visitation creates a sanctuary. It forces you to be fiercely, unavoidably present with the reality of death and the reality of the people suffering in front of you.
It's a sanctuary from the relentless performance of modern life. No screens, no flashy expressions of identity, just human beings standing face to face with mortality.
It's rare.
It is rare. So once you have adopted that visual humility and your phone is buried deep in your pocket, fully silenced, you walk further into that emotional foyer. And this is where you immediately face what is arguably the most intimidating part of the entire experience.
Approaching the grieving family.
Approaching the grieving family.
That approach is the crucible of the visitation. The guide outlines the standard physical flow you can expect. You will likely encounter a receiving line, or at least a natural, organized flow of guests approaching the immediate family near the front of the room.
And what are you supposed to do?
The instruction provided by the source is clear. Greet the immediate family members, offer your condolences, and crucially, keep the interaction brief but sincere.
The physical mechanics of the approach are mapped out simply. A standard handshake, a gentle hug if you're close to the family, or simply warm eye contact. And the guide is very explicit that an elaborate speech is not necessary.
Not necessary at all.
The recommended phrases are the absolute classics. I'm so sorry for your loss. You are in my thoughts and prayers. Or, they will be deeply missed. It adds that if you knew the deceased well, sharing one brief positive memory is perfectly acceptable, but it warns against long stories.
And hidden within those simple instructions is a profound paradox regarding how humans communicate during a crisis.
Here's where it gets really interesting. There is a fascinating paradox here. The guide essentially tells us to use cliches, which goes against every instinct we have to say something profoundly comforting.
It does feel counterintuitive.
Right. When you are driving to the funeral home, you're rehearsing lines in your head. You think, I can't just walk up and say, I'm sorry for your loss. It's too generic.
It's not enough.
Yeah, this person's entire universe just shattered. I need to offer them something poetic, something original that will actually heal their broken heart. Yet the source insists we stick to the absolute bare bones basics. Why?
Because profound moments do not require profound words from the guests. The reality of death has already provided all the gravity the room can hold. We have to analyze why we feel the urge to say something poetic in the first place.
Okay, why do we?
Often, when we try to craft a highly original philosophical monologue to deliver in a receiving line, we are subtly trying to satisfy our own ego.
Oh, wow.
We want to be remembered as the person who said the perfect thing, the person who provided the breakthrough comfort. But the family does not need poetry. They need steady, reliable presence. The classic phrases, I am so sorry for your loss, function effectively precisely because they are expected. They are linguistic anchors.
They require zero mental processing from the grieving family.
Exactly. The family is experiencing severe cognitive overload. They have likely been standing there for hours, shaking hundreds of hands, hearing hundreds of voices, while simultaneously processing the trauma of their loss.
Just enduring it.
If you step up and begin weaving a complex narrative or delivering a philosophical treatise on the nature of life and death, you are forcing their exhausted brains to do mental work just to follow your train of thought.
You're giving them a chore.
Yes. A simple, expected phrase washes over them gently. It communicates the essential underlying message, I care about you and I am here for you, without demanding any intellectual engagement or emotional translation in return.
That dynamic perfectly explains the rule against long stories. The text explicitly advises avoiding long stories or anything that might unintentionally cause distress.
Because it's draining.
Right. Even if you have a hilarious, heartwarming story about the deceased, a 5-minute monologue traps the family in front of you. They're physically exhausted, their feet hurt, their adrenaline is crashing, and meanwhile the line of other guests is backing up behind you. In that context, brevity is a profound form of mercy.
Brevity as mercy. That's a beautiful way to phrase it. It is an act of deep consideration for their physical and emotional stamina. And understanding that need for brevity leads directly into the text's most critical warning about this frontline interaction. What you must not say.
This is huge.
It is. The guide specifically flags statements that attempt to explain or rationalize the loss. It points to phrases like, it was their time, or everything happens for a reason.
The source notes that these phrases can feel dismissive, impersonal, or minimizing, but I think this is where a lot of well-meaning people trip up.
They do, constantly.
Because the person saying everything happens for a reason is almost always trying desperately to be helpful. They're trying to offer a silver lining to a dark cloud. Why does that instinct backfire so terribly in the receiving line?
It backfires because it fundamentally misunderstands the mechanism of empathy. Empathy is not about solving a problem, it is about sharing a feeling.
Okay, unpack that.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, when a person says everything happens for a reason, they are usually reacting to their own internal discomfort with the chaotic, painful, and often senseless reality of death. As human beings, we crave order. We hate senseless tragedy.
We want it to make sense.
So when we see a family in agony, our instinct is to fix it, to organize the chaos by slapping a neat little philosophical bow on the pain and declaring that it is all part of some grand, understandable plan.
We want to solve the problem of their grief so that we can stop feeling uncomfortable witnessing it.
Precisely. But grief is not a puzzle to be solved. And when you try to explain it away, you are minimizing the brutal reality of the family's immediate pain. You are subtly suggesting that they shouldn't be in so much agony because there is a logical reason for the death.
You're invalidating their despair.
Exactly. Empathy requires the immense courage to sit in the discomfort with someone, not to fix it. The text urges us to focus on empathy, presence, and genuine care. You achieve that by validating the pain, acknowledging how terrible it is, not by trying to philosophize your way out of it.
Think about this dynamic in the context of your own life. Recall a time you were going through something incredibly difficult, maybe a devastating career failure or the end of a long-term relationship.
Everyone has a moment like that.
Think about the people who immediately tried to give you a lecture on silver linings, telling you that when one door closes, another opens. Didn't you just want to scream? Now contrast that with the friend who simply sat next to you, looked at you, and said, "This is incredibly unfair and I'm so sorry you have to go through it."
Night and day difference.
Right. The simple, unvarnished acknowledgement of the pain creates a bridge of connection, whereas the attempt to intellectualize the pain builds a wall of distance.
That is the core of the interaction. You are there to build the bridge, not the wall. You offer your simple, brief condolences, you validate their reality, and then you step aside to let the next person do the same.
Okay, so once you have navigated that receiving line, the adrenaline of that initial interaction begins to drop. You step further into the room and you suddenly become aware of the broader environment.
You take in the whole room.
Yes, and this is where you encounter the specific religious and cultural touchstones of the Catholic tradition. The geography of the room changes, the sounds change, and the visual symbols are highly specific. The guide breaks down several of these elements, starting with periods of formal prayer.
For many attendees who do not share the faith, this is where anxiety can spike again. The guide notes that there may be periods of formal prayer during the visitation, most notably the Rosary. It specifically instructs attendees that silence, attentive listening, and a calm demeanor are required during this time.
When a community begins the Rosary during a visitation, they aren't just reciting prayers at random, they're generating a very specific acoustic environment. For our listener who has never experienced it, what exactly is happening in the room when the Rosary begins?
Well, the Rosary is a highly structured meditative prayer sequence central to Catholic devotion. When a community recites it together, an individual usually leads the first half of a prayer, and the entire room responds in unison with the second half.
It's a call and response.
Yes, and this creates a very distinct rhythmic murmur. It is a cyclical wave of sound that fills the space. Functionally, beyond its deep theological significance as an act of intercession for the soul of the deceased, it acts as an acoustic grounding mechanism for the room.
An acoustic grounding mechanism. That makes so much sense. It provides a shared cadence for everyone to lock into. Okay, put yourself in the listener's shoes. Let's say you aren't Catholic. You are attending the visitation to support a coworker. Suddenly, the room goes quiet, someone stands up, and everyone around you starts murmuring this rhythmic prayer in perfect unison.
It can feel intimidating.
You don't know the words, you don't know the rhythm, you are just standing there. How do you avoid feeling like an imposter? Do you try to mumble along to blend in? Do you step out into the hallway?
The guide offers immense comfort for exactly this situation. It states explicitly that if you are unfamiliar with Catholic prayers, it is perfectly acceptable to participate quietly or simply observe.
You just stand there.
Yes, you do not leave the room. Walking out during a communal prayer would be highly disruptive and draw the focus we work so hard to keep off of you. And you certainly do not need to fake murmuring the words.
Yeah.
The source emphasizes that the Catholic community is welcoming, and perfect words or actions are not expected of guests.
So observation itself is a completely valid, respectful form of participation.
I refer to it as solidarity through observation. By standing quietly, perhaps bowing your head slightly, maintaining a calm physical demeanor, you are projecting deep respect for the family's faith, even if you do not share it.
You are holding the space.
You are helping to hold the quiet space. You are providing a silent, supportive perimeter while the immediate community engages in their spiritual traditions. Your respectful presence is the participation. You are not an imposter. You are an honored guest bearing witness to a ritual that is bringing the family comfort.
That completely neutralizes the anxiety. You don't need to be a theological expert. You just need to be a respectful witness.
Exactly.
And speaking of witnessing, the text also addresses the physical centerpieces of the room. The casket or the urn. This is often the focal point of the physical space.
Yes, and here again the guide provides a gentle, clearly defined boundary based entirely on personal comfort. It states that approaching the casket or urn is a personal choice, and there is absolutely no requirement to do so if you are uncomfortable.
Which is a profound relief. People process the physical reality of death very differently.
You do. It's highly subjective.
Some individuals find immense closure in seeing the person at rest. Others find the visual confrontation with the body deeply traumatizing.
The etiquette fundamentally respects that psychological diversity. It does not force interaction. However, if you do choose to approach, the customary behavior outlined by the text is a brief moment of silence, prayer, or reflection. It notes that some individuals may make the sign of the cross, while others simply pause in a quiet respect.
It's about reverence.
The crucial underlying mechanism here is that the space immediately surrounding the casket or urn is considered a sacred microenvironment within the larger room. It is a zone of pure reflection. It is unequivocally not the place for conversation, catching up with acquaintances, or socializing.
You treat that specific area with the highest level of reverence. Then, as you move away from the casket, there are elements on the periphery of the room which the text highlights as incredibly important, yet often overlooked by guests.
The displays and the guest book.
Right. Let's look at the guest book first. The text says signing it provides a lasting record of comfort. Why is a simple signature in a book given such weight in this guide? I mean, it's just signing your name.
To understand the weight of the guest book, we have to look at the psychology of memory formation under acute stress.
Okay.
During the visitation, the family is operating in a haze of grief, adrenaline, and exhaustion. Cortisol is flooding their system, which significantly impairs the hippocampus.
The part of the brain that makes memories.
Exactly, the part responsible for encoding new memories. They're greeting dozens, sometimes hundreds of people. Their episodic memory of the event will likely be highly fragmented, if not entirely blank in places.
Wait, really? They literally will not remember who was standing in front of them.
In many cases, yes, they won't remember. So days, weeks, or even months later, when the funeral is over, the initial wave of community support recedes, and the quiet, enduring reality of the loss sets in. That guest book becomes vital.
It's tangible proof.
It is a literal external hard drive for a grieving brain. Seeing your name written in ink proves to them that they were not alone in their darkest hour. It is a physical, enduring manifestation of the community support that survives long after the emotional foyer is closed.
It is proof of presence when their own memory fails them. That is so powerful.
It really is.
And a similar logic applies to the memory boards and photographs often displayed near the guest book. The source notes that taking time to view these displays shows the family that you are taking a genuine interest in the deceased's life and legacy.
Viewing the memory boards is a beautiful, low-pressure way to engage with the purpose of the gathering. Looking at the photos is an active way to honor the person without having to speak a single word.
It takes pressure off.
Yes, and it gives you, as a guest, a broader, more complete understanding of the life that was lived. Showing you facets of the person, perhaps as a young parent, a soldier, or an athlete, that existed far beyond the context in which you knew them.
And for the family, glancing across the room and seeing a guest smiling quietly at a photo board from 30 years ago is incredibly validating.
It's deeply comforting.
It visually communicates that their loved one's life had impact, that their history matters to the community. And as the text makes very clear throughout this section, all of these principles apply to everyone in attendance, including non-Catholics. Guests of all backgrounds are heavily encouraged to attend. Your respectful presence, your silent observation of the rituals, and your signature in the book are what matter most.
So we have covered the core events inside the room: the receiving line, the prayers, the casket, and the displays. But successfully navigating a visitation isn't just about what happens within those four walls.
There's more.
Yes. It also requires an understanding of the logistics that surround the event. The guide shifts focus to these crucial peripheral elements: time management, the presence of children, and practical support.
These logistical elements are often where people make well-intentioned but highly taxing missteps. The guide addresses time management first.
This is a big one.
It notes that while visitations have set hours, often a block of 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon or evening, it is considerate to avoid arriving at the very beginning or staying until the very end, unless you are close, immediate family.
The text specifically advises that a brief visit is usually sufficient, so the family isn't overwhelmed. This ties back directly to our earlier discussion about emotional bandwidth.
Think of the family's experience during a visitation like running an emotional marathon.
A marathon, definitely.
It is an incredibly grueling, endurance-testing event. As a visitor, your appearance at the visitation is like standing on the sideline handing the runner a small cup of water. It is a vital, refreshing jolt of support that helps them keep going.
They need that water.
But if you decide to stay for 2 hours, it's like you've hopped onto the track and started jogging alongside them, trying to talk their ear off when their lungs are burning and they can barely breathe. You stop being a source of refreshment and quickly become an additional burden they have to carry.
That analogy captures the dynamic perfectly. The family is pacing themselves emotionally to survive the entire scheduled block of time. If you monopolize their attention, you drain their limited reserves.
You're taking their oxygen.
Furthermore, by occupying their time indefinitely, you are physically blocking other people in the community from offering their own support. By arriving slightly after the official start time, staying for roughly 15 to 30 minutes to offer your condolences, view the displays, perhaps participate in a prayer, and then gracefully exiting, you fulfill your role perfectly. You provide essential support without demanding endurance.
Okay, what about the logistics of bringing children? This is a massive point of anxiety for parents.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you bring them to expose them to the reality of life, or do you hire a babysitter to shield them? The source addresses this directly, stating that children can attend to help them understand loss, but there are strict caveats.
This raises an important question about how we introduce children to mortality. This touches on a major sociological shift. In modern culture, we often attempt to shield children completely from the reality of death.
We sanitize it.
We sanitize it or we hide it away. But the source suggests that a visitation can actually be a profoundly important environment for helping children understand the concept of loss and community support. However, it requires significant psychological labor from the parents beforehand.
The text insists they must be prepared in advance for what they will see and how they are expected to behave. You can't just wing it.
You absolutely cannot just walk a child blind into a room containing a casket and dozens of weeping adults. That's terrifying for them.
Right.
You must explain in clear, age-appropriate language the purpose of the gathering. You prepare them for the emotional environment. You explain that people might be crying, and you reassure them that crying is a normal, healthy reaction to sadness, not something to be feared.
You set expectations.
Yes. You explicitly explain the rules of the physical space, the requirement for quiet voices, the lack of running or playing. By front-loading this information, you are treating the visitation as a structured, safe educational environment. You are modeling empathy and respect for them.
But the text is also clear on the limits of that education. They are expected to behave quietly. If a child becomes overwhelmed, fussy, or disruptive, the respectful, necessary move is for the parent to immediately take them outside or into a vestibule. The family's need for a calm environment supersedes the child's learning experience.
Precisely. The family's peace comes first. And this leads to another environmental variable the guide addresses, the presence of food.
Ah, the food table.
Yes. If the visitation is held in a slightly more informal setting, or a space with an adjoining reception room, the text notes that food and refreshments might be available. But it issues a very specific warning, to partake with discretion.
Partake with discretion, because it is terrifyingly easy to slip into party mode.
Very easy.
You go to the refreshment table to get a cup of coffee, you run into an old friend from high school you haven't seen in 5 years, and suddenly you're laughing loudly and catching up on careers and vacations, completely forgetting where you are.
It happens all the time. The presence of food naturally triggers deep-seated social conditioning. When we hold a plate of food and a beverage, our brains subconsciously tell us we are at a social mixer or a celebration.
The wires get crossed.
The environmental cues clash with the solemn reality. The line between a morning ritual and a casual cocktail party can easily blur if attendees lose their situational focus. You have to actively resist the psychological urge to turn the refreshment table into a networking event or a joyful reunion.
So you have to stay mindful.
You can certainly eat, but you must maintain the atmospheric awareness we discussed at the very beginning. The low volume, the reflective tone, the visual humility.
And the etiquette doesn't end when you put your coffee cup down and leave the building either.
No, it extends beyond that.
The guide makes a point to talk about life beyond the room. It states, supporting the family goes beyond what you say in the moment. If you're close to the family, you may also consider offering practical support, such as helping with meals, errands, or childcare in the days following the service.
This is where the community truly proves its strength. The visitation and the funeral mass are high adrenaline, highly populated events. The family is surrounded by a buffer of people.
A physical buffer.
But when the week ends, the distant relatives fly home, the house empties out, and the crushing, mundane reality of daily logistics sets in. This is often the most dangerous time for the family.
Because everyone else goes back to normal.
Yes, grief makes basic human tasks, like going to the grocery store, making a school lunch, remembering to pick up dry cleaning, feel like climbing Mount Everest. Offering highly specific practical support during this phase is the ultimate expression of the etiquette we've been discussing.
I think highly specific is the vital mechanism there. We all have a habit of saying, let me know if you need anything, as we leave.
Everyone says that.
But that phrase actually puts the burden of project management onto the grieving person. They have to figure out what they need, and then they have to feel guilty about asking you to do it. Instead, actionable empathy looks like saying, I am coming over on Tuesday at 5 p.m. to drop off a lasagna. Or, I will pick your kids up from soccer practice for the next 2 weeks so you don't have to drive.
Actionable empathy is the perfect term for it. It removes the cognitive burden of delegation from the family. It proves that the sentiments you offered in the receiving line, that I am here for you, were not just empty social protocol, but genuine binding commitments to their well-being.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We've navigated from that initial hesitation at the heavy front door, through the visual humility of dark clothing, the undocumented presence of silenced phones, the mercy of brief condolences, the acoustic grounding of the rosary, the memory-saving function of the guest book, and finally, the actionable empathy required in the weeks that follow.
It's a comprehensive guide.
Let's synthesize all these logistics, these hidden rules, and these psychological insights back to the core thesis of the source material.
If we look at the totality of the guide provided by the funeral program site, the overarching theme is profoundly clear. Visitation etiquette, despite its specific cultural and religious rules, ultimately boils down to three core human capacities: kindness, respect, and presence.
You do not need perfect poetic words. You do not need an encyclopedic knowledge of Catholic theology or liturgy.
No, showing up in the right frame of mind is the message itself. By wearing the muted colors, by silencing your phone, by enduring the awkwardness of the receiving line without resorting to minimizing platitudes, and by offering brief, focused support, you are participating in a profound ancient human ritual.
You're doing the real work.
You are helping to build that emotional foyer, creating a safe, highly structured space for a family to gather the strength they need to begin the hardest journey of their lives.
It really is a beautiful thing when you look at it not as a list of restrictive rules, but as a carefully choreographed dance of compassion. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a larger thought to ponder as we wrap up.
A provocative thought.
Yeah. We've talked extensively about how countercultural this entire experience is. In our fast-paced, hyper-individualized, screen-addicted modern world, we rarely, if ever, have structured, communal spaces dedicated entirely to sitting quietly with discomfort. We rarely practice supporting others without immediately trying to fix them or document the moment.
It is rapidly becoming a vanishing skill in modern society. We are losing the ability to simply bear witness to pain.
We really are. So my question for you is this. How might participating in these ancient, quiet rules of visitation etiquette actually teach us how to be better, more present friends and listeners in our everyday lives? If we can learn the discipline to silence our phones, lower our voices, blend into the background, and just be with someone in their darkest hour at a visitation, imagine how that exact same level of undistracted, humble presence could transform our daily relationships, our marriages, and our friendships.
A profound thought to carry forward. Empathy is a muscle, and these traditions offer a powerful, necessary place to exercise it.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you feel a little more prepared, a little more confident, and a lot more connected to the deeply human why behind the traditions. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.